The dust devil crossed Main Street like a ghost looking for trouble. Elias Ward watched it spin between the buildings, kicking up dirt and old newspapers, before it died against the general store. His massive frame filled the doorway of the saloon, shoulders nearly brushing both sides. Men moved when he walked. They always had. But today something felt wrong. The crowd gathering near the sheriff's office looked hungry. Not for food, for blood. "That's her," someone shouted. A woman rode into view on a paint horse, her dark hair braided down her back, a leather satchel bouncing against her hip. Apache. Even from a distance, Elias could see her spine straighten as she noticed the crowd. She dismounted in front of the doctor's office. Her movements were precise, controlled. The kind of control that came from years of being watched. Sheriff Duggan stepped into the street. His hand rested on his gun belt, casual but deliberate. Talia. The name carried across the silent street. She didn't look at him, just tied her horse and turned toward the doctor's door. "Your mother needs to leave the valley." Duggan's voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough to sound official. "There's been complaints." "What complaints?" "Witchcraft." The word hung in the air like smoke. "Cattle dying. Children getting sick. Always happens after your mother does her ... work." Talia's hand froze on the doorknob. When she turned, her face could have been carved from stone. "My mother heals people. She doesn't curse them. That's not what folks are saying." "Folks." She said it like the word tasted bitter. "Which folks, Sheriff?" A rock hit the dirt near her feet, then another. The crowd pressed closer. Duggan made no move to stop them. Elias watched Talia's eyes sweep the street, calculating odds, counting exits. She was outnumbered 20-1. Her hand moved toward the knife at her belt. "She's got a weapon." Someone yelled. Duggan drew his pistol. Time slowed. Elias saw it play out in his mind. The girl would fight. She'd wound maybe 2 men before they brought her down. Then they'd ride for her mother's cabin. By morning, there'd be 2 more bodies in the valley. His boots hit the boardwalk with a sound like distant thunder. The crowd turned. All 6 feet 6 inches of Elias Ward crossed the street in long, purposeful strides. His shadow fell across Talia like a wall. She tensed, clearly expecting another enemy. "What's the charge, Duggan?" The sheriff's smile didn't reach his eyes. "This ain't your concern, Ward. I asked what's the charge. Suspicion of sorcery and conspiracy to harm livestock through supernatural means. That's not a real charge, and you know it." Elias's voice was quiet, which somehow made it more dangerous. "You got witnesses?" "Got a whole town full of witnesses." "To what? Cattle dying? Happens every season. Children getting sick? That's called winter." Elias turned to face the crowd. "Who here actually saw this woman or her mother do anything illegal?" Silence. "That's what I thought." He looked back at Duggan. "You want to arrest her? You better have more than superstition." Duggan's jaw tightened. "Your daddy fought Apaches in the war. He'd be ashamed." Something flickered in Elias's eyes. Old pain, old anger. "My daddy's dead, and he died knowing he'd done things God wouldn't forgive. Maybe I learned something from that." He gestured to Talia. "Get your medicine and go." She stared at him, suspicious. "Why?" "Because I'm telling you to." "That's not a reason." "It's the only one you're getting today." He positioned himself between her and the crowd. "Move." She did, quickly, grabbing supplies from the doctor, who'd been watching through his window. Money changed hands. Then she was on her horse, riding hard for the edge of town. The crowd muttered but dispersed under Elias's glare. Only Duggan remained, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You made a mistake, Ward. Wouldn't be my first." Elias walked back toward the saloon. Behind him, Duggan called out, "People are going to wonder why you're protecting them. Going to wonder if maybe you got some personal reason." Elias kept walking, but the words followed him home. The Ward Ranch sprawled across 3,000 acres of prime valley land. Cattle grazed on grass that stayed green most of the year. The house sat on a rise, looking down on everything like a judge on his bench. Elias found Mara in the study, working on the ranch books. His daughter had her mother's eyes and his own stubborn jaw. She looked up when he entered, immediately reading his mood. Something wrong? Where'd this witchcraft rumor start? Her pen paused over the ledger, just for a second. What rumor? Don't play games with me, Mara. The talk about the Apache healer. Where'd it come from? How should I know? People talk. He studied her face. After 25 years, he could read her like a brand on a calf. You're lying. I'm not. Where did it start? Her composure cracked. Why do you care? They're squatting on good land. Land we could use for the eastern herd. The words hit him like a fist. Tell me you didn't. Didn't what? Mention to a few people that strange things happen around that cabin? That Mrs. Muller's baby got sick right after the old woman visited? Mara stood, defensive now. It's true. People have noticed. Babies get sick. That's what babies do. The timing is coincidence. Elias's voice rose. You started a rumor that could get people killed over land? I thought you'd be proud. The words burst out of her. You always say we need to expand. That weakness is death in this territory. I found a way to solve our problem without spending $1. By creating a mob? By being smart. He stared at his daughter. Really looked at her. When had she become this? When had his lessons about strength and survival twisted into something cruel? Your mother ... double quotes, he started, then stopped. Couldn't finish. Mama's been dead 5 years, Mara said quietly, and you've never once told me what killed her. The doctor said fever, but you always looked like you were hiding something. Elias turned away. Old memories surfaced. His wife, Catherine, burning with fever in their bed. The white doctors shaking their heads, helpless. Then a knock at the kitchen door at midnight. An Apache woman he'd never met, carrying herbs and quiet confidence. Catherine had lived. The fever had broken. He'd paid the healer in gold and sworn never to tell anyone. His pride couldn't bear the thought of people knowing an Apache had saved a ward. The healer, he said slowly. Naomi, she saved your mother once. Extended her life by 5 years. Mara's face went pale. What? That witch you want burned out gave me 5 more years with Catherine. 5 years you got to know your mother. He moved to the window, looking out at the land his pride had built and his shame had stained. And now her daughter's riding home to tell her there's a mob coming. I didn't know. That's the problem. You didn't ask. You just saw what you wanted and took it. He grabbed his coat. Like father, like daughter. Where are you going? To fix this before someone dies for your ambition. He was halfway to the door when he heard hoofbeats. Fast. Desperate. The Apache woman, Talia, burst into the yard. Her horse was lathered, heaving. She slid off before it fully stopped, stumbling toward the house. Elias stepped onto the porch. What happened? They're coming. Her voice shook, but her eyes were fire. 20 men, maybe more. Sheriff Duggins leading them. She looked up at him, and he saw something that made his chest tight. Fear, raw and honest. She said you'd help. My mother. She said to find Elias Ward, that you owed her. How does she know? She said to tell you Catherine forgave you. For the war. For the things you did? Talia's hands clenched into fists. I don't know what that means. I don't care. She's dying, and they're going to burn her alive before she can go in peace. The words landed like stones in still water. Catherine had known. Somehow she'd known what he'd done during the Indian Wars, the villages, the fires, and she'd forgiven him, but he'd never forgiven himself. How long do we have? An hour, maybe less. Mara appeared in the doorway. She looked at Talia, then at her father. Papa, I didn't mean... Get the rifles, Elias said. And the medical supplies. You're going to fight them? Mara's voice was small. I'm going to stop them. He turned to Talia. Can you shoot? Better than most white men. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Then let's go make sure your mother dies in her own bed, not in ashes. The cabin sat in a hollow surrounded by cottonwoods. Smoke rose from the chimney, peaceful and innocent. It looked nothing like a witch's lair, just a home. Elias dismounted slowly, hands visible. Talia rode ahead, calling out in Apache. The door opened. Naomi stood in the entrance, wrapped in blankets despite the fire behind her. She was thin, wasted by whatever sickness was taking her, but her eyes were clear and knowing. She looked at Elias for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You came. You knew I would. Catherine told me you were stubborn, said it was your worst quality and your best." She stepped aside. "Come in. We don't have much time." The cabin was simple but clean. Herbs hung from the rafters. A medicine bag sat open on the table, its contents organized with careful precision. Naomi lowered herself into a chair by the fire, moving like every bone hurt. "How long?" Elias asked quietly. "Days, maybe a week." She coughed, the sound wet and harsh. "The growth in my chest. There's no medicine for it. No healing." She looked at Talia, who was checking the ammunition for her rifle. "I told her to leave, to let me go in peace. But she's stubborn too. Can't imagine where she gets it." Naomi's laugh turned into another cough. "They're really coming?" "Yes, because of me. Because people are scared, and scared people look for someone to blame." He knelt beside her chair, this giant of a man making himself small. "I'm sorry. For what happened to your people. For the part one played. You were a soldier. I was a killer." "Yes." She didn't flinch from the truth. "But Catherine saw something in you worth saving. So I will trust her judgment, even now." She reached out and gripped his hand with surprising strength. "Protect my daughter. Not because you owe me. Because it's right. I will." Talia stood at the window. "They're here." Elias rose and joined her. Through the trees, he could see torches. 20 men at least, just like she'd said. Duggan rode at the front, a rope coiled on his saddle. "A noose. Bar the door," Elias said. "And stay inside no matter what you hear." "What are you going to do?" "Talk to them. They didn't come here to talk. Then I'll convince them to start." He walked outside before either woman could stop him. The evening air was cool and still. Birds had gone quiet, sensing the violence to come. Islands moved to the center of the clearing and stopped, waiting. The riders emerged from the trees. Duggan's smile was sharp when he saw Elias. Well, the big man himself. "Here to beg for mercy on behalf of the witch? I'm here to tell you to turn around and go home." Laughter rippled through the crowd, but it was nervous laughter. Because Elias Ward standing in your path was like finding a boulder in the road. You could go through it, but someone was going to bleed. "We got a warrant," Duggan said. "You got a piece of paper with your own handwriting on it. That's not the law, that's your ambition. People in this valley got rights. Right to safety. Right to protect their families from what?" Elias's voice cut through the sheriff's speech. "From a dying woman? From a healer who saved more lives than you've ever protected." He took a step forward. "I know where this rumor started. I know who spread it. And I know why." Uncertainty flickered across several faces in the crowd. "Doesn't matter where it started," Duggan said. "Matters what's true. Then let's talk about truth. Truth is, Samuel Fisher's cattle died because he overgrazed his land and they starved. Truth is, the Mueller baby got sick because every baby in the territory got sick this winter. That's called whooping cough, and it's got nothing to do with witchcraft." Elias's gaze swept the crowd. "Truth is, you all looking for someone to blame, because blaming is easier than admitting sometimes bad things just happen. You calling us liars?" Someone shouted. "I'm calling you scared, and I understand. But I'm not letting you turn that fear into murder." Duggan's hand moved toward his gun. "You can't stop all of us." "No." Elias's voice was calm. "But I can stop you. And then your friends have to decide if they want to die over a rumor." The silence stretched tight as wire. Then hoofbeats shattered it. Mara rode into the clearing, and behind her, a dozen ranch hands from the ward spread. They fanned out, rifles across their saddles, forming a line between Elias and the mob. "Papa," Mara called out. Her voice shook but held. "I'm sorry. I'll tell them. I'll tell them it was me. Mara, get out of here." "No." She turned to face Duggan and the others. "The rumor started with me. I made it up. I wanted their land for our ranch, so I lied about the cattle, about the sickness. All of it." The crowd stirred, angry and confused. "She's just covering for the witch." Someone yelled, but others were backing their horses away. The certainty was cracking. Duggan's face had gone red. "Doesn't change what that woman is. Doesn't change. She's a healer who saved my wife." Elias's words rang out clear and final. "Catherine Ward was dying, and Naomi brought her back, gave us 5 more years together. So when you talk about that woman in the cabin, you show respect." Shocked silence. Then Duggan laughed, but it was the laugh of a desperate man. "You sold out your own people. For what? For Apaches? Your father's rolling in his grave." "My father's in hell for what he did," Elias said quietly. "And I've spent 20 years trying not to follow him there. Today's not the day I change course." Duggan drew his gun. Everything happened at once. The rifle shot came from the cabin window. Talia. The bullet kicked up dirt at Duggan's horse's feet. The animal screamed and reared. Duggan fell, cursing, and fired blind. The clearing erupted in chaos. Elias dove for cover behind a water trough. Bullets punched through wood and whined off stones. He returned fire, aiming high, trying to scatter them rather than kill. His ranch hands did the same, putting rounds over heads and between horses. But not everyone was so careful. A bullet caught one of Deegan's men in the shoulder. He went down screaming. Another rider took a shot to the leg and toppled from his saddle. "Fall back," someone yelled. "This is madness." Half the mob broke and ran, but Duggan and 5 others pressed forward, firing as they came. These were the true believers, the ones who needed someone to hate more than they needed sense. Elias stood and walked into the open. Bullets hissed past him. One tugged at his coat sleeve. Another took off his hat. He didn't stop, just kept walking toward them, his rifle at his hip, firing measured shots that drove them back step by step. "I'm done asking," he roared. "Go home or die here." A bullet punched through his shoulder. Hot and bright, he stumbled but didn't fall, raised his rifle one-handed and fired. The shot took Duggan's horse in the chest. The animal collapsed, pinning the sheriff beneath it. The remaining attackers looked at each other, at Elias still standing with blood soaking his shirt, at their sheriff trapped and helpless. They ran. Mara rushed to her father's side. "You're shot." "I noticed." He pressed a hand to the wound. Not fatal, but it hurt like hell. "Check on Naomi." Talia was already outside, her rifle still smoking. She looked at the bodies in the clearing, then at Elias. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or mutual respect earned in fire. Together, they walked back to the cabin. Naomi sat by the fire where they'd left her, but something had changed. Her breathing was more labored. Her skin had taken on a gray cast. "The excitement," she whispered. "Too much for an old woman." Talia dropped to her knees beside the chair. "Mama, no. Not yet. It's time, child." Naomi's hand found her daughter's face. "I'm not afraid." Elias stood in the doorway, suddenly feeling like an intruder, but Naomi gestured him closer. "You kept your word." "Yes, ma'am." "Then I'll keep mine." "Tell you what Catherine wanted you to know." Her eyes held his. "She said you were a good man who'd done bad things, and that good men deserved the chance to balance the scales." She coughed, the sound rattling. "She said to tell you it's never too late, to choose different, to be different." Tears burned in Elias's eyes. He'd thought himself beyond crying, but here it was, grief and gratitude mixed together. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank her." Naomi smiled. "I'll be seeing her soon anyway." She died as the sun touched the horizon, quiet and peaceful, with her daughter holding one hand and a repentant soldier holding the other. They buried her on the ridge overlooking the valley. Elias dug the grave himself, despite his wounded shoulder and Talia's protests. It seemed important somehow to put his back into this labor, to feel the earth and remember that all of them, red and white and every shade between, would end up here eventually. The whole valley turned out for the funeral. Some came out of respect, others out of shame. Duggan was there in chains, waiting to be transported to the territorial prison for attempted murder. Mara read from the Bible, her voice breaking on the words, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." When it was done and the last shovel of dirt had been placed, Elias stood at the grave for a long time. Talia waited with him, silent. "What will you do now?" he asked finally. "Stay. This is my home." She looked at him. "What about you?" "You know they'll never forgive you for choosing us over them. I chose right over wrong. If they can't forgive that, it's their problem." He touched his hat brim. "My ranch has an opening for a healer. If you're interested, the pay's fair and the work's honest." She studied him. "You're serious?" "I am. I don't know anything about cattle. You know about healing. That's what's been missing from this valley for too long." He turned to face her fully. "I can't give you back what my people took. Can't undo the wars or the treaties or any of it, but I can offer you a place and respect, and the promise that anyone who works my land will be treated fair, regardless of their blood." Talia was quiet for a long moment. Then she extended her hand. Elias shook it. Behind them, Mara watched with red eyes and something that might have been hope. She'd spent the last 3 days confessing her lies to everyone in the territory. Her reputation was ruined. But maybe, like her father, she'd find something better in the ruins. They walked down from the ridge together, all 3 of them. The sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of gold and amber. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more prejudice, more hate, more people who couldn't let go of old wounds. But today they'd chosen healing over harm. And sometimes that was enough. Elias Ward's reputation as the toughest rancher in 3 counties died that day on the ridge. But something else was born in its place. Something harder to measure but infinitely more valuable. His conscience. Clean for the first time in 20 years. He rode between the 2 women, his wounded shoulder throbbing, his heart lighter than it had been since before the war. The land stretched out before them, cursed by history but not condemned by it. Time they healed it, he'd said. And maybe, just maybe, they would.